you are a mother. So were you into this prior to being a mom, or were you already a mom at the time?
I was actually already a mom at the time.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us an email and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, today we're speaking to a woman who reached out. Really interesting because she's a mom, but she is into age play. So a kink where she regresses in age to around the age 6 to 9 when she's with a partner. So we haven't discussed age play on the show, so we're going to talk about that today. And we've got the guests on the line, and thanks so much for being on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be a part.
Yeah, of course. Can you just give us your definition of what age play is?
Sure, absolutely. Now, when it comes to kink and BDSM, everyone has kind of like their own variation of what it means or what it means to them. So for me personally, age play is somewhere that I go mentally. Sometimes I go there physically with what I dress and how I play around or things I wear, things like that. And for me, it is basically going into a mental headspace where I allow myself to basically be a kid again. Where I fall, as like you said before, is between the ages of 6 to 9. Some people consider that little space. Other people consider that middle, because there's little, middles, and bigs. So I consider myself somewhere towards the little to middle area. And yeah, I just kind of get into that headspace and allow myself to be younger for a little while, to not have responsibilities, to let somebody else basically tell me what to do, because as a mom, you are very much in charge of everything. You run everything, you run the show. So it's my way of sitting back, going back to a time period maybe in my life personally that I needed to kind of revisit. It wasn't, maybe what I wanted it to be. So age play allows me to do that.
So what exactly, changes? Like, do you change your voice, and like what kind of things do you usually do when you're, doing that, like pretending to be for the ages from 6 to 9?
Well, for me personally, I don't change my voice too much. Sometimes if I'm trying to be more, I try to be more funny, I guess you can say, with my age play. I try not to take it too seriously. The best way I can describe it is basically sometimes I will completely change my outfit. I'll put on I don't know if you've seen, like, they have them in Hot Topic, like the zipper up, like onesie that like have a hood and stuff like that. Or I'll just throw on like a really big t-shirt, cute shorts, and like maybe put a bow in my hair or have a bunch of like stuffed animals around me, things like that. But I describe my little space. I actually have like a persona kind of to say. I don't know if you remember the show Invader Zim from back in the day. Mm-hmm. I'm 30, so
throwback.
You guys would remember. The little character Gur from Invader Zim is basically how I describe her, that part of me. Because, he essentially kind of does something very similar. He puts on the suit and he's a puppy. So that's kind of like my personality. I'm funny, I'm witty, I kind of do things, for a reaction sometimes. My voice basically stays the same unless, like, for example, like I really want something. I'm like, ooh, can I have that? Like, not much of a change in my voice, is more so a flare, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Got it.
So when you're doing this with a partner, is it just about kind of being obedient and being in that space, or there's a sexual nature to this as well?
There's definitely both. Like I always tell everybody, age play, little space, whatever you want to call it, it does not have to be sexual whatsoever. There are days where I, will let it fall into the sexual realm, and there's days where I just completely just want to keep it, fun, friendly, low key. But yeah, with a partner, basically, it kind of just flows naturally on its own. I'm not really someone to be 100% obedient, because I do also consider myself a brat as well, which, you kind of just do little things here and there just to kind of get a reaction from your partner, or to kind of push the scene or the moment in the direction you want it to go. For me, being a brat kind of makes it more fun because I'm also in the kink community a switch. So that's, someone who could be dominant, someone who could be submissive. So it allows me to kind of like play around with that. And then it also kind of lets me get put back in my place.
Okay.
If that kind of makes sense.
So like throwing tantrums or something a child that age might do to get a rise out of a parent, for example?
Exactly. For me, it's one of those where, if you tell me, okay, you're only allowed to have 3 pieces of candy right now, I'll go, okay, well, what if I just have 2 more pieces of candy because I did what you said before? So technically I've been behaving. So don't I earn it? And then I kind of just keep pushing and pushing and pushing the envelope, kind of like a kid would, until they have to get to that point where I have no choice but to be put in my place, because they'll take something that I really love away from me, or I'll get a punishment or a punishment, something to that effect.
Can you explain the difference between a punishment and a punishment?
Yes. So a punishment is something that's really not something that you dislike. It's something that you kind of like, but kind of dislike. So for me, I'm into like paddling, spanking, the all night, all that stuff. So for me, spanking really isn't much of a punishment because I enjoy it. But because of the fact that I enjoy it, but there is also that aspect of pain there, it can be a punishment, because although it may be fun for me, once we get to a certain level, it kind of does become more of a punishment. How much longer can I handle it? Whereas a punishment could be something that I really do not like to do, but because of whatever I did, I have to do it. Like, for example, I'm not a big fan of writing lines. Writing lines is one of those big ones for littles, especially, saying I will not, touch the cookies when I'm told not.
Like
Bart detention,
Simpson.
like Bart Simpson
on the chalkboard, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's more of a punishment because I don't like it at all. Whereas a punishment, there's like an element of this is kind of fun, but we know we're doing it because you were bad, basically.
Okay.
So that's something that you do kind of fully play into, is if you are getting punished and your partner's like, write 100 lines of this, like you'll sit there and write it.
Oh yeah. I've had to write a whole 2 pages, front and back, something that I wasn't going to do. I think there was one time where I was supposed to follow up with the partner that I was with at the time about making sure that I organized all of my collars like I was supposed to, and then let him know.
Okay.
I forgot to let him know that entire day. And of course, he didn't say anything because he wanted to see if I was going to actually mention it. So then the next morning I got, well, you forgot to do this. So now you're going to write me lines that I will not forget to let daddy know when I completed my task, over and over and over again, on 2 pieces of paper, front and back. So
wow. So you mentioned daddy, and that was my next question. Your partner in this, what is the fantasy? Is this, when you kind of age regress and you're in this headspace, is this person supposed to be your parent or just an adult figure?
For me, yeah, it's kind of like an adult figure more so than a parent, just because I do like to deviate the two because I am a parent myself. So it's more like an adult figure, and daddy's just a term that I use with this person because it feels natural to call them that. You can call them whatever you want. I've had a partner that liked to be called senpai, if you've ever watched anything with anime.
Okay.
So yeah, that's more so he's the adult influence in my life while I'm not being an adult.
And have you had multiple partners that kind of have engaged in all of this with you?
Yes, I've had to say in the last few years, I've had probably about 3 or 4 partners that have engaged in it with me. 2 of them were in it, because they already were involved in the world. And the others I basically brought into the world with me and kind of like showed them what it's about. And then over time, they actually grew to love it themselves because we created a bond on such a different level than the average, I guess you can say vanilla couple.
Okay. So I think one of the biggest things to address, or from what I've seen, one of the biggest debates or just criticism of age play is that there's this sexualization of a 6 to 9 year old in this case, or your partner is playing an adult parental figure and you're playing a child. And then obviously people will say, well, does that cross the line into pedophilia or this sort of pedophilia mindset? So what do you have to say to that?
Well, first thing is I am completely NMIK, which is no minors and kink whatsoever. I don't care if you're 17, no minors and kink.
What does that mean exactly?
NMIK, no minors and kink, means that anybody who's under the age of 18 should not be engrossing themselves within this realm, in this community, just because you are still young. You're not fully aware of what you're doing, and you don't want to accidentally hurt yourself physically or mentally, with something that you're not able to truly comprehend. And also, you don't want to interact with somebody who's much older than you and you have a bigger problem on your hands.
Gotcha.
But yeah, when it comes to that, trust me, I've seen it all, heard it all. But one thing that I do tell people is that, remember, we are two grown adults. We are consenting to this, and we know we're adults. Like, it's not a mystery. We know we're adults, and we have that within us the entire time we're doing something. And more so, it's the fact of being able to maybe become more vulnerable through going back into our mental space a little bit, because the way I look at it is, as a kid, you're fearless in a sense. You're able to just kind of go and do, and you're willing to try new things and not be so nervous. And as an adult, if someone tells you to do a backflip, you're like, oh my God, if I land this way, I'm going to break my ankle. Oh my God, I'm going to land on my head. This can go wrong. That can go wrong. Whereas when I let myself go to that headspace, it opens up this ability for me to kind of relax, if that makes sense. Now, my situation is different than everybody else's. So I'm not going to speak, obviously, for everybody, because everyone uses this, as differently. Mm-hmm. But I would kind of say, it's not something that we're trying to be like, oh, I want to have sex with a child. Obviously, that's disgusting. We're never going to be okay with that.
When it does become sexual, does anything change in that sort of role play, though? Or is it sort of you stay the same characters?
For me personally, once it starts to become more sexual, it's a little bit harder for me to stay completely like a little kid, unless, I'm dressed up per se, or, I have like a pacifier in my mouth, but it kind of does get a little bit more mature. So it kind of stops being so cutesy and little to now I'm a little bit more mature in my head. And, sometimes my partner will remind me, remember, you're the person who can't think for themselves because you're in that mental headspace. You're a child in your head, if that kind of makes sense. So it's more so the fact of that I'm kind of just throwing caution to the wind, and kind of like how a child is used to their parents telling them what they can and cannot do. That's kind of where it flows into where it becomes sexual, not more so like, oh, into little kids. No, I'm into the idea that you are in a headspace that you're allowing me to control the situation and tell you what to do, just like a kid.
Okay. And I'm curious, like, how did you, kind of get started in this and find out that you were into this sort of thing?
It's actually a really interesting story. So basically, it's one of those things where I will say, as you get in this journey, you kind of realize how early on in your life it might have been a concept, but you didn't know it was a concept until you delved into it. But one day I was just kind of scrolling through Instagram because I'm like, I feel like I need something more, because I did deal with a lot of, childhood trauma that I never really addressed because I am from the lovely island, as cringy as that is. So I lived in a household where, you didn't really talk about emotions, you didn't talk about trauma, you didn't talk about any of that. So it kind of always stewed for me. And I never really got to deal with it per se. So I was scrolling through Instagram and I came up on a young woman. Her name is Evie Lupine. She's fantastic. And she breaks down everything for every single kind of kink and fetish out there, the pros, the cons, the misconceptions, everything. And once I started listening to her and her explaining how sometimes age players and littles, they use this to heal from trauma, to do things they never got to do. Because, yes, as you can probably tell, I have daddy issues. So this, I was like, okay, maybe I can use this to go back and kind of heal the child inside of myself, to kind of take control of a part of my life that I didn't really get to have control over. So I kind of used that as a way to combat that trauma, if that makes sense. So yeah, basically I just saw it online and I was kind of just like, let me try. Because I'll be the first person to say, I never thought I was going to be an age player or into little space. Because when I first looked at it, I'm like, this is kind of weird that grown adults are dressing up like babies. But then once I found my age group, and then once I found a way that I was able to enjoy it, then I'm like, okay, I can create the world I want. It doesn't have to be the world that everybody else is playing in. So yeah, it just kind of started all from watching her videos, finding her Instagram, and then realizing that it really is a coping mechanism for a part of my childhood that I didn't really get to experience, because I was a kid who was dancing, pageants, commercials, modeling. I was always on the go. I never really had the chance to always do the things that other kids got to do. My family wasn't very much, emotionally available. So, and my dad wasn't in my life for most of my life. So I never really got to have that kind of connection with people and with, the adults in my life. So it allowed me to do that. And when life gets stressful now, sometimes I'm like, all right, adulting has been too much today. It has been a lot. And I've kind of had enough. So you know what? Let me go be a kid again. Kind of like when people go to Disney World and they say, everyone gets to be a kid again. That's kind of where I take it. So yeah, that's basically how it kind of happened.
Okay. And you are a mother. So were you into this prior to being a mom, or were you already a mom at the time?
I was actually already a mom at the time. I was pregnant when I was 19, had my daughter when I was 20, and now I'm 30. So I was actually, my daughter was probably somewhere, I would say maybe around preschool, kindergarten age, when I realized this for myself. And trust me, I sat there for a long amount of time thinking, is this wrong of me because I'm a mom? And I already have a kid who, is being a kid, and things like that. And am I going to be judged for being a mom? And, I realize that there's so many people out there, funny enough, who are parents who do this. So yeah, I would say like I was already a mom for a few years before I realized this is something that I wanted to do.
Are you like kind of open about, this as well, like to your close friends and stuff? Like they know that you're kind of into these types of things?
Oh yeah. All of my closest friends know that this is what I do. I will say I am very, very lucky that my friends are 100% supportive of me, because I've taken the time to explain to them what it does for me. And they know that it comes from a good place and not from a creepy place. I mean, obviously, I don't broadcast it to family just because, as I told you before, my family's kind of a little bit weird when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, my friends are 100% supportive. I've actually helped a couple of my friends personally realize that they had some things that they were into, and they were able to confide in me and feel comfortable in me to talk about those things. And I kind of helped them start their journey.
Oh, wow. Was it ever strange at any point when there was sort of the age crossover between you and your daughter where you would be regressing back to the age that your daughter actually was at the time?
There were some moments where I was kind of like, okay, we're both thinking the same way at this moment. But the one thing that I do make sure that I do is that if my daughter is awake in the house, if it's that time of the day for her, to try my best to keep it 100% separate. If, let's say, I'm having a really, really bad day and I know this is something that I need to do, it's one of those where you separate the two worlds. So it never leaves basically my bedroom if my child is in the house. You have to be completely distracted by something, but you can do things in a kind of subtle way that don't have to be so obvious. So, for example, if, I'm home on a Saturday and so is she, and I'm just kind of having a bad day and I feel like this is something that I need, all I have to do sometimes is just put on a Disney movie, sit there with, one of the many stuffed animals because we collect them as it is as a family. So I can just sit there with my stuffed animals or watch a movie and have a snack and keep it all in my brain. I don't have to protrude every single part of the age regression of the little space to be in that mode. And sometimes, my partner will just sit next to me and, just tell me little things that kind of remind me of my little space, be like, oh, I'm so proud of you for, being a essential big girl and handling this in a mature way. Do you need a blanket? Do you need me to cuddle you right now? And it honestly just kind of looks like normal everyday life. But to us, we're able to get into that part of the lifestyle without it conflicting over with, having a child at the same age.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it seems like it's just not always sexual, I guess, to put it simply. It's sometimes just the mindset that you're in.
Right, exactly. I mean, there is a good amount of time where it's not sexual at all.
I was going to ask, like, what, like, percentage wise, like, how often does it turn into something sexual, or, how often do you just kind of use it as, like you said, like a coping mechanism? Like, you'd rather just watch a Disney movie and sit there and, just get cuddled,
Yeah.
Sounds kind of nice right now.
Sounds amazing.
I would say probably about 85% of the time it's not sexual.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then, there is that time because, I am a grown adult. We adults, we have needs, we have wants. And it just happens to be that, we were already, playing around in that realm. And sometimes I can be in that headspace, but then also want to add another kink into it. So I can be in little space and, my partner can say, you're going to be a good girl for me right now. And we're going to pull out the wax and we're going to see how much more you can handle than you did the last time. And then, maybe because I don't have any clothes on or I just have a skirt on, when you're obviously touching the person, it'll roll into it naturally. I don't think for me, I know there's some people out there who they are babies and they will go straight into it, no wits or thoughts about it. But for me, it's kind of more so it gradually kind of happens because the environment is allowing it to.
Okay.
And it sounds like you have some other kinks as well. Is that usually sort of the bridge where, like, you are, pretending in your head that you're 6 to 9 years old, and then it's like clear that there's going to be some sort of sexual, component to this, and there's just other sort of kinks or fetishes that are kind of thrown into the mix?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I love road play. It's one of my top favorites. So, sometimes as when I'm in that little headspace, it can kind of be used as one of those punishments we talked about, where, I, have just been too hyper, just too much for him because my partner is very low key. He honestly is one of those people who's definitely more shy, on the shy end of things. And, he works a lot. And then sometimes I just come out with a burst of energy for no reason. And he's like, okay, listen, we need to calm you down a little bit. We need to relax you. So I'm going to do this tie around you. And you're going to sit, on the pillows, on the floor. I will give you a water cup if you need it at all. I'll give you water, whatever you need. I'll put on a TV show, but we're going to tie you up and you're going to sit here and calm your ass down. So, that's kind of how, that's like one of the kinks and how it kind of flows into the other, which then could become sexual from, just what's happening.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Guys, the end of the year is approaching. The holidays are upon us. This is a time where naturally we get more reflective. We're in our feelings. We think about our life, the things that we want to do. It's natural to feel sad and anxious around this time. But by adding something new and positive into your life, you can counteract those feelings. And maybe that new and positive thing is therapy. Therapy can help you feel grounded, and it can give you tools to better manage your everyday life. I'm not lying. I just finished therapy before I started recording this. I've been doing therapy for well over a year, and I genuinely feel like I'm becoming a better and more capable version of myself. So if you're thinking about giving therapy a try, then try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, and you'll be matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, so you can find that person that you really mesh with. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/OPL today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OPL, and get 10% off your first month. People make fun of me, but I love water. Like, it is one of my favorite beverages. I love the taste. I love the texture. I love the lack of color. It's just everything about water is awesome. What I don't like is drinking water that is not clean. So it terrified me to find out that a U.S. geological survey showed that nearly half of America is potentially drinking toxic water. If you don't want to be a statistic, then join me in using AquaTrue. With AquaTrue, you get crisp, clean taste, and it virtually eliminates 100% of all contaminants in your water. It saves you money because you don't have to buy bottled water, which is great. It's sleek and compact, really nice design, and it removes 15 times more contaminants than your ordinary pitcher filters, which you could basically find in any supermarket. I knew that I had to get AquaTrue to ensure that I was not drinking contaminants. So if you also want to prioritize your health and your hydration, then head over to aquatrue.com and use code OPL to grab 20% off your purifier. That's aquatrue.com, AQUATRU.com, and use code OPL to grab 20% off your purifier. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so this decision's pretty much a no-brainer. And believe me, it also makes a wonderful gift because it's that time of year. And don't forget to use code OPL at aquatrue.com for that exclusive discount. Happy drinking. You also mentioned in the email pet play and knife play specifically. Are those some of your other favorite kinks?
Yes. Absolutely.
And pet play is, I think we spoke to someone who's like a human puppy before. Is that the concept that you sort of get collared or walked around on a leash and you're this person's pet?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like I said, Gur is that headspace for me. So I'm kind of like the silly, fun, comical puppy, where some people take it very seriously and they're strictly a dog, where I'm the dog that will talk back to you like a little kid. And I don't really fall into where I will not be able to speak. I'm kind of like, if I call myself more of a human pet because I still will talk to you and, but I'm still a puppy. I don't know if you've ever seen, it's very more of an anime thing where like, they'll be like half girl, half dog, half girl, half whatever.
Okay.
That's kind of where I pull it into. But yeah, pet space, that's a big one because then I can be a puppy, the little form of a dog. And then knife play is just something for me. It doesn't always fall into little space, but sometimes it can if I want to go that dark with it. But for me, yeah, knife play is one of those where it's just the anticipation. It's just the feeling of like something kind of sharp just gently grazing your skin, and like, if you're like blindfolded, you don't know where it's gonna touch next.
Ooh. Are
You
you
don't
getting
know.
cut? Sorry, Joe's laughing. I don't know why I'm making all these like sounds. But I'm not into it. I'm just interested.
I mean, that
Yeah.
didn't sound too bad, to be honest with you, the knife stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if I want to get sliced up, but I don't know.
Well, we spoke to also someone into blood play, and they were like cutting people
Yeah,
up.
they were
getting
doing
cut.
stuff.
So
Yeah.
is this just, are you actually getting cut, and is there blood involved, or it's just a little like, oh, you don't know where this poke's coming from?
For me personally, no. I deal with a very chronic form of eczema, so I have to be careful, with my skin, obviously, because I could scratch myself on my own and cut my own skin open. I don't really need a knife to do that for me. But yeah, for me, and my partner personally, he's not really into blood play. It's not really his thing. So obviously, I'm always going to respect what my partner's likes and dislikes, do's and don'ts are. There is the occasion where you might push a little hard, you might get one of those little tiny scratches. But yeah, no, I'm not drawing blood. I'm not, anything like that. It's more so sometimes for me where I'll set up a scene like, you just got kidnapped and tied up, and I'm threatening you with this to do exactly what I say, or I'm going to, hold this against a part of your body that makes you squeamish.
Okay.
Got it.
Wow. Well, I think you've done a great job. Just, I know we really talked about age play, but just making it so clear that even a specific kink is so different for everyone. And, we've spoken to so many people on the show where it seems like they just really understand their own boundaries, the boundaries of their partner, and just how important that communication is between people who, are experiencing this or, performing certain kinks.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if you know anybody in the kink community at all, like it's a big deal to make sure that you communicate, you follow the rules, you follow the steps, you meet the person, you negotiate, you express your do's and don'ts. Your absolute red, absolutely not. You have that safe word, all those kinds of things, because, I have seen people personally basically kind of get banded out of the kink community because they did not follow those rules.
Okay.
And they've kind of been like, pushed down. People will say, please do not play with this person. They do not negotiate. They do not respect boundaries. And for everyone else's safety, please do not play with this person. And they will not find a partner to play with.
Where does this community kind of live? Like, it feels like there's it feels like a town, and there's a mayor like, all right, this fucking guy's out of the town now. He's not allowed. Like, where is all this happening? I mean, it's like a forum, or is it a website?
Oh, there's so many different places that it can happen. Some people are strictly online. Like I used to have a friend of mine who, funny enough, was from Germany. And we would play online through just role play, because obviously we couldn't meet in person and he couldn't find somebody to do the kink with him. He was one of those people that was into, being kicked in the balls basically. And, obviously it's kind of hard to tell somebody that you're
Please give him our email if you're still in touch with him. I want to talk to that guy.
Yeah, we do want to talk to him.
Yeah, he does speak English, obviously. So yeah, I will definitely let him know. You guys would love to hear about that. But yeah, like there's, like I know for a fact, like especially like out west more, there's like it's kind of a kink community within like your area of like where people will host kink events or parties or things like that. So if let's say you went to an event, you're probably going to see those people again at another event, something like that. There's also an online community. It's obviously gotten very hard because the rules have gotten more and more strict and people's accounts are constantly being taken down left and right. But there's like an online community. There's, you can like, for example, if you go on FetLife, it's a little bit tricky FetLife because you do get the weirdos and the creeps who don't understand what this is and they just want to have a good time. But you can find events on there. They'll say, okay, located in Queens, located in Brooklyn, located in Manhattan, RSVP to this event. You will start to, the more you go, the more you become recognizable, the more people remember you. So you obviously don't want to make a bad name for yourself throughout the community of people you're involved in, if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like we're sort of in the kink community. Like, I feel like we have like honorary degrees.
What are you talking about?
Basically do.
Yeah, I feel like
because they're doing the show.
Yeah, from the show, not like from personal experience.
Yeah, I was like, what are you saying, dude?
You guys are kind of like how can I put it? You guys are kind of like the spokespeople for the kink community. You're like the
nice.
Kind of like, when there's someone like who's doing like the sporting events and they're telling, the plays that are happening, like a baseball game. That's kind of like how I think about you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the commentators, you're like the narrators of it. So, because trust me, I think a lot of what you guys have talked about has kind of made people feel more comfortable because, like you guys say, you're not in the kink community, but you take the time to respect it. You take the time to learn about it, even if you're not into it, And it's like, oh, okay, well, if these guys who don't do this stuff completely don't mind talking about it and they look at it like, oh, okay, that's really cool for you. That means that they can open up themselves and then know that maybe there's people out there who might not be into it, but they can still have friends,
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's fucking awesome.
That is awesome.
You would say that. I mean, that's kind of what the whole point of the show, I feel like, is to, hopefully be able to achieve that, things that we don't necessarily know about or understand or like, even after understanding them, we're like, well, okay, not for me, but cool. Like someone's into that and that's just what it is. But yeah, like anytime we do like an episode about like people with, very unique kinks or fetishes and the things you never even thought you would hear before, there is this always this feeling of like, it's almost admirable to get to a point where you can actually indulge in that, because I feel like a lot of people probably have some urges to do certain things and things that you would probably think are vanilla, honestly. And they're just like they think they'll be judged or they, whatever. So it's like difficult for people to open up, like, I guess, sexually, even with their partner. So it is like almost admirable when people can get to the point where it's like, I get home, I fucking put on a diaper and I do this and do what I was like, it's like, wow, you're fully bought in and just doing kind of what makes you happy, as long as everyone's sort of like on the same page and being safe. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, one of my closest friends, because there are cannabis-friendly events that happen out here, and she's a chef and she does food for these events, and we kind of mixed her food in with kink, funny enough, and we've done, okay, if you want, you can pay $5 to have me spank her 6 times extra onto your dish, basically. I brought my puppyhood, I brought kink stuff with me, and people would just come up and go, oh, what is that? How do you use it? And I would show and I would explain, like, maybe my girlfriend or my boyfriend would be into that. That's kind of really cool. And just those little tiny things. Obviously, I'm not sitting here tying somebody up to the ceiling. That's not safe for people who are new. But just putting it out there in a comfortable environment and people being able to discuss it allows them to open up and just be themselves, because we live in a freaking crazy effed up world, right? So if you can find a little bit of an escape, if you can find one more thing that makes you happy when everything is trying to pull you down, freaking go for it. And if I can help somebody find something else that maybe could have saved their relationship, that could help them process something that they couldn't process before. Like, I have dealt with sexual abuse, physical abuse, and sometimes doing something similar and kink makes me feel like I'm taking my power back. I'm in control of the situation now. And because I don't know if you've heard, but the submissive honestly has the most power in the dynamic out of the set of the dom, because they're the ones who can stop it at any time. So that kind of gave me my power back. So if I can open somebody up to something, or at least just make somebody comfortable with the idea of knowing that it exists, it just kind of creates more and more and more acceptance of just people being different.
Yeah, I mean, well said. We appreciate you being, like taking the time, but also just being super well spoken about this, and being as honest as possible, and again, just taking the time to come on and share information about this.
Of course, of course. Like I said, I'm a complete advocate for people being themselves. I'm a biracial girl who grew up in a heavily white community. I was one of the first kids of color to go to my school district. So I know exactly what it's like to feel like you're the black swan of the group. You're the, I guess you could say, the ugly duckling, the one who sticks out, and feeling like you don't have a place. I want everybody to find their place, whether it's kink, whether it's just, finding a group of people like who love video games just like they do. Because I've met people through kink that I found out I had other interests just very similar to theirs. And we'll spend more time talking about that than even about kink. It just, if I can help people open themselves up the way I wish people helped me open up, at any part of their life, then boom, I got you. I'll help you do what you got to do.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, like Joe said, thank you so much for just saying all of this and opening, I think, a lot of people's eyes to just kink in general and just that community. And then obviously age play. So thank you so much, and just wish you the best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will keep sharing all your guys' podcasts because I make everybody listen to you when they're with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
I think she said it all best.
I think she did say it all best. She sounded prepared.
Yeah.
Like she was crushing that interview, honestly. But yeah, I mean, not for me, which is fine. But
yeah. And there's going to be a lot of people listening to this too. Like that's maybe bigger gap to bridge, I think, for a lot of people, similar to, episodes we've had with like rape and kidnapping fantasies and, age play and just the dynamic of, an adult and a child.
It gets
and
dicey.
Yeah. And like the language
there.
around it, it feels so unnatural because on the other side of the spectrum of, pedophilia and like people who act this out in the real world is like, whoa.
Clearly that is different though. Like, obviously.
Yes. But I'm just saying in doing some research for this too, just like the main debate and people speaking up, about this and how uncomfortable it, makes them. Not people that are involved in this community, but people who are sort of onlooking and judging.
Right. I do think that like there's a very clear difference between those two things because you still have to, you're like attracted to adults. You're not attracted to minors. Yes. When you have this type of thing. And also the way that she was kind of describing it, I was picturing like a Disney adult, like the ones that show up at the park and they're like crying when they see Mickey Mouse and shit. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like you're a little confused by that, but it's like, there's something that it means something to them and whatever. And it's not that it's like, what she was describing where she was like just sitting on the couch and like, I just want a blanket and like be told that I'm a big girl and whatever the fuck, like,
Well, I think it being a coping mechanism for her own sort of childhood trauma and the childhood that she didn't have control of that's super interesting.
I think that makes sense. And also, how many couples that do the baby talk shit anyway? It's like, but like that to me is like not that different than what she's talking about. Like obviously there's a sexual component and we don't really know the details behind that. But like for the most part, like you said, 85% of the time it's just like
non-sexual.
Yeah, just treating me like a baby. And it's like, sometimes you hear couples and it's like, oh my little, and they're both doing it to each other. And it's like, that's like, it's sort of similar here, I mean, look, I get it how that's a little dicey or whatever, but I think that like pedophiles are attracted to fucking children.
Of course. And
the fucking
was
not
adults.
supposed, it was not, I was saying fucking as like a adjective, not as a verb, but like they're attracted to children. And people who are into this, I think, are more attracted to the idea of being small and like whatever, and it's not like that. That's a different thing.
Yeah,
you know.
And
what
it seems like that, at least in her case, is being heavily communicated. Between partners as well. So no, I'm glad we had her on to discuss this. Like you said, just super prepared and someone who has been practicing this for I think almost a decade based on, she said, you know, when her daughter was born to now, and just having so much experience and communication that she's gone through with different partners about this. So really good to hear from her. Like we said, about age play, but also just kind of kinks and those communities in general.
Yeah. And also the last thing I'll say here is like, obviously there's fucking exceptions to this, but for the most part, when we hear about the kink community, and the rules and stuff, like, a lot of the guests that we've had on the show are pretty serious about these like rules and like boundaries and like things you're supposed to do. And like, I remember one time we did an episode of someone, she was talking about, she was into all these kinks, and I was like, whoa, holy shit. But then we had brought up something about like a girl who was like walking out in public with like jizz on her face or something. And she was like completely against that sort of thing. Cause she's like, now you're getting other people
not
involved.
Forcing your kink on people who
exactly.
aren't.
So like, I will say from our experience with talking to people who are in the kink community, like they are very heavily like about the rules and like whatever. And these are people that are coming on the show and talking about it for a half an hour to 45 minutes. They're into this like heavily. Obviously there are people who fucking break rules and do whatever, but just wanted to say that I think that, you know, as long as everyone's being safe and everything's legal and like cool and whatever, do your thing. That's all I could say.
Yeah, well said.
But yeah, so anyone else that would like to come on the show, hit us up. The email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram, TikTok @OPL Podcast. You could support over at patreon.com/OPL Show. And that is all for this week.
See you guys next time.